Hi everyone, welcome back to this new video of our backend series. In the previous video, we have learned about how can we connect the MongoDB Atlas to our code base, with which we can use the MongoDB as a database for storing the data of about the users and the to-do list of the users created by them. So in this today's video, we will learn about how can we write controllers where the logic of the actual backend is written. So this will be a coding video. We will not do much sort of testing in this video. We will just write the controllers, and for testing part a separate video will come. So it will be telling us how can we test a production grade backend system. So for that, let's go to our code editor. So I'm in my VS Code. So if you can see, this were the thing which we did in the previous video. So I will just go to my controllers page. In this place, let me create a new controller. So the name of my controller will be user.controller.js. Now this is the place where I will create my controllers, where there will be code for logging in, creating an account of the user and deleting the account. So as simple as that. The first thing which you need to do is you have to import Mongoose. Since we are going to deal with the database, and the thing which helps us to connect with our database is most importantly the Mongoose, which is actually helping us to connect with our database and to send read or write instructions to the database. Right now, with that as done, we will need to connect with our database, and since that is already done in the app.js, now we have to write the code. So let's first write the sign up process. Now for the sign up process, what are the things we need to do? We'll just write in a to do over here. Okay, so the first thing, we have to get details about the user's email, his password, his name, and that's enough. So what we have to get, we have to obtain the name of the the email and the password. Okay, now we have to obtain the name, email as password to create an account of the user. So there needs to be some function which will create the sign up. So let's write sign up, sign up. So it will be async. Since we are writing or dealing with database, I have mentioned that every operation that you do with database, you need to have async and await. So for that, async async here, then a arrow function. That's all. Now here inside this arrow function, there needs to be two parameters about the request and the response. Request is the request which is made by the front end, which is telling me about or giving me the details about the user, which will have the email, the password, and the the name. So there has to be some two parameters. One is request and another one is response. Now response is the thing or the data that I send from the server to the front end. The front end is sending me request along with the data, and the response is the data which I am sending from the backend to the front end. Fine. Now every code that you write inside the backend, it's important for production. You wrap the entire code under the try and catch block so that it's easy for everyone to debug the errors in the code. So let's write try block and then catch. Now this catch block will catch for errors if there is any error occurring. Well enough. So inside the try, I have to get three things. One is the name, the email, and the password. So let's write const. I'm just using a destructuring JavaScript object. So if you are familiar with the ES7 type of JavaScript, so it allows us name, email, comma, password. Okay. Now, how we are obtaining the data from the front end? Through the request. Now the request has various types. Request can send the data to the backend in various ways. There can be body, there can be query, there can be parameter. So when you are sending things like the email, the password, the name, there will be some long form of data, right? So it's always beneficial or always a good practice to send the name, email, and password to the backend using the request body. So for that, to obtain the name, email and password, I will just write from request quest request dot body. Now I can also receive this in form of some query or some form of parameter, but that's not a good approach in this case when we are accepting things like password, because when we're accepting things like password as a parameter or a query, the things are exposed as URLs, which is not acceptable. Because you're exposing the password, there is a loss of security, right? So with that as done, I have my name, email and password. Fine. So now what I have to do, I have to import the user model which I have created. So how did I export my user model? I exported my user model as users schema. That's fine. So let's go to my user.controller.js. Now I have to first check if the user account already exists. So how will I do that? So const check user. So how will I do? Equal to await. Now since my database is in some other location, so I need to use await mongoose dot model. So let me just import the user model. So user model is imported from the user.model.js. Okay, so await user model dot find one email. So if that email is already present in my database, so it will give a positive response to the check user. So if user already exists, then my account cannot be created, and in that case I have to log in. That's fine. So if the user already exists, I will just send a response from my database, response dot send that message that the user already exists. Okay. Now in some case you sometimes also send some sort of status code which represent that, status code which represents that your action is failed, right? So with details about the status code, about how many types of status code are there, what status code means what, so I will come up with some other videos about that. But in some case you actually send some status code. That's a good professional practice. So sometimes you can send 401, 404, 409, that if the user already exists. So if my user is not exist, that means I have to create an user's account. So for that case, so just write const user equal to new means we are just creating a new entry, user model, and then we have to supply the name, email and password, and my account will be created. And then I write await user.save. This will save the users which we have just created, and it will send me a message that user has been created successfully. That's fine. Now a problem here is in production, it's not a good practice to save this password directly. So a good practice is to just hash the password so that it's difficult for anyone to, if he or she has access to the database, so that it becomes difficult for him or her to get to know about the password. So for doing that, I will just take you to Chrome, and this is the place where we were learning about .env. Just Google up. So if you Google up, you will find out a thing called bcrypt, BYCRYPT. Okay, let's go to the first page. If you see the weekly downloads of bcrypt, it is totally huge. That means it's used in production, right? So a library which helps you to hash password. Hashing means to change the password with some hashing parameters and algorithms so that it's difficult for any normal person to debug that, to know what is the password actually. Okay, so let's come to the documentation. How to install it says that to install it, just copy this npm install bcrypt and that will be done. So usage. So this is the place which tells about the usage. So there is two parameters. One is salt. One is my plain password, my some other text password, and technique one to hash a password, generate a salt, hash on separate function calls, and we will see how the password is hashed using bcrypt. So let's see. So let's go. This is my code editor. I'm back again. So let's just install bcrypt. So just go to terminal, just paste the command that you copied, npm install bcrypt. All right, so it will take some time to install bcrypt. So once my bcrypt is installed, just go to this place, import bycry bcrypt from bcrypt. Okay, now once you are going to create an account, just remove everything for the time being. Okay, so before you're creating an account for a new user, it's important that you hash the password. So for hashing the password, so just write const hashed password equal to await. Now bcrypt comes with various hashing algorithms, so it is a good practice to use await in this case, because there may be some possibility of bcrypt taking some time to hash your password. So it's always a good practice to use await in this case. So I will use await bcrypt dot hash. So this is actually a function, and this will hash my password up to the mark 10. So 10 is just a salt, means this is an algorithm type. So it is, if you come to this and hover over here, the first is the data which is to be hashed, and salts around, that means how many times the data is going to be hashed. Okay, salt can be used in encryption. If specified as a number, then salt will be generated with the specific number of rounds, and that many times the password will be hashed. Very good. Now once this is done, we have my hashed password, and just go to this place, const user equal to new user model. Okay, user model, okay, and then name, email, password, hashed password. Okay, await user dot save, and then you can send a message that user has been created successfully. Done. Now once I have my sign up process done, this is all about the sign up of the user. Now if there is some sort of error, I will just console.log it, and if you want to give some custom message, so you can write that error in sign up process, which is this. Okay. Now once this is done, my sign up process is complete. That's fine. Now many a times you may need to send some response to the front end, that the account which is created, a user account which is created. In that case, you can also send the user as data. Okay, so how you are sending the data? You are sending the data as .data, and inside that you are sending the user which is created. That's fine. Now my sign up process is done. So how will you export this? Just simply write export, and inside this just write sign up and default over here. Right, clear? That's fine. Now another thing, once you load the sign up, it's pretty easy for you to just write the login now. So login will take very less time. So just write login. For login, you just need to have the email ID and password from the request.body. So just write const email password from the request body. Right. Now for that, you have to find out the mail, whether it is existing inside the database or not. Okay. So const user equal to await user model dot find one email. See, you can use find also, find one also. Since my probability is high that there will be only one email address corresponding, so I will use find one. You can use find also in this case. So if there is no user, that means that I have to write that user does not exist. So response dot send message that the user does not exist. So I just remove this. I will write one by one. Okay. Else, that means my email exists. So the next thing is to validate the password. So how can you validate the password? Just write const check password, and here I will use the same hashing parameter, password, okay, rd equal to await bcrypt dot compare. Okay, now what are the two things I will compare? I will compare the password which is supplied from the database and the password which the user is providing as request.body. Well enough. So just write password and user.password. That's fine. My system is having low battery. That will not create an issue. So if my check password is successful, send that your login is successful. Otherwise, just send incorrect password. So that's about the login. So you have to always send the export the login from this below part. So I believe my code is correctly written. So how will I test it? That will be some in different video. So it's giving me some error. Okay, so I have mentioned that try block, but I forgot to mention the catch block. So it's always good practice to write the catch block. So it will say that error in the login process. So there is this. So how the comparing is being done? So the compare function of the bcrypt will compare the data. That means the data to be compared against and the original data which is supplied. So okay, so it will return either true or false whether the comparison is successful or not. We'll see how that data is coming or not. Okay, so that's fine. Our login and the sign up controllers are written successfully, and with this we are good to go to the next video. In the next video we will see how can we write the to-do controllers of the particular user, using which the user can create a particular to-do, update his to-do, delete his to-do, and also create his to-do, right? So that's all in today's video. In the next video we will come up with how can we write the controllers of the to-do, and then we can proceed slowly and do the testing part also. So that's all in this video. I will see you in the next video. Till then, keep learning and keep exploring.